Part 1. The Promise They Made. Chapter 1. The Brochure on the Table. My name is Samuel Hart. I turned 68 the week my son slid a glossy brochure across my kitchen table. It had a stage photo of a patio full of smiling seniors who looked like they'd been promised 2 extra decades if they signed before Friday. The place was called Cedarbrook Living. A tagline underneath read, "Where family worries become yesterday's troubles." My son, Andrew, tapped the cover with an index finger that looked too steady for the conversation he was picking. "Dad, we're worried," he said. "You fell last month. You call me instead of the ambulance." That's not a system." "I slipped on dishwater," I said. "It happens." The floor didn't come with a safety rail. My daughter-in-law, Kara, sat beside him, hands cupping a mug she didn't drink from. Kara was strategic silence wrapped in a scarf. "It's about peace of mind," she said in a voice measured like a Pilates instructor. "For you and for us." Out the window, my wife's hydrangeas had overgrown the fence line, greedy with color the way only a plant can be. I had trimmed those bushes every spring since Elaine and I bought this place in 1987. We used to argue about where the blue met the pink, like the property line between ocean and sunset. "I'm fine in my house," I said. Kara's eyes flicked toward Andrew and back. "We're not telling you to leave," she said. "We're talking about planning. Paperwork. Medical proxies. Consolidation." I would remember that word later. Consolidation. It sounds like safety. It means nothing escapes. Andrew leaned forward. "Dad, if something happens, I need to be able to act. To pay bills. To manage the house. We're not asking you to give anything up. Just put in one place under my name. For now." "For now," I repeated. "And where do I live in that plan?" "In your house," he said quickly. "Obviously. We just make it official. There's even a clause we can add. Kara, what's it called?" "Right of occupancy," Kara said. "Life estate. You'd have the right to live here the rest of your life." She said, "Right the way you say left. Directional, not moral." I picked up the brochure. The smiling people on the cover didn't look like they owned very much. I set it down slowly. "Let me think on it," I said. "You always say that," Andrew replied. "And then you don't think. You avoid." I bit my tongue. Once upon a time, that boy's head fit in the crook of my elbow. His hair smelled like clover after soccer practice, and his biggest problems were subtraction and a broken Lego ship. Now he watched my eyes for weakness like a lender evaluating collateral. "Give me a week," I said. "We have an appointment with the notary Monday," Kara said. "We can reschedule if we need to, but sooner is better. For everyone." I nodded because my throat had decided not to collaborate. They hugged me at the door. Andrew's cheek scratched my stubble. Kara smelled like citrus and starch. When they left, the house inflated again, a lung I hadn't realized was squeezed. I stood in Elaine's kitchen. The hydrangeas caught the wind and bowed. "Don't let them tidy you out of your life," Elaine would have said. She had a way of turning worry into mischief. I could almost hear her. "Make them earn your yes. Don't give it away because they're impatient." I poured coffee, then forgot to drink it. Monday felt like a thunderhead on the calendar. Chapter 2. The Paperwork Parade. I said yes. I wish I could say I said yes because I believe them or because I wanted to be generous, but the truth is simpler and uglier. I was tired. Grief is heavy, even in year 3. It sits on your chest and fogs your decisions. And I'd always been the fixer, the doer, the one who stayed up late reading manuals so nobody else had to. A few signatures, a few consolidations, and maybe my son could sleep without checking his phone after midnight. The notary's office smelled like a brand new folder. Papers rustled like promises wearing suits. The lawyer Kara found, a young man with an expensive haircut and a watch bigger than his wrist, explained it all crisply. "This transfers the deed now into Andrew's name," he said. "With a life estate reserved to you, Mr. Hart. Your right to live here permanently is protected. After your passing, title passes to Andrew without probate. Efficient, cost-saving. And my savings account?" Kara asked, as if it were a list item. "That's the revocable trust," the lawyer replied smoothly. "Andrew as trustee, Mr. Hart as beneficiary during his lifetime. Distributions for care and maintenance as needed." The lawyer slid each document toward me with practice choreography. I read enough to feel smart and not enough to be safe. The pen felt heavy, my hand felt old. When it was done, the lawyer shook my hand and smiled like he'd just sold me a second car. "You've done the responsible thing," he said. "Families that plan avoid conflict. We avoided conflict for 2 months. It was the happiest 2 months of that arrangement's life." Chapter 3, Little Changes. The changes started like drafts under a door. A suggestion here, a removal there. Andrew set up automatic payments. "You don't need to lick envelopes," he said. It was convenient, so I didn't argue. The cable package changed. "You don't watch sports," Kara said sweetly. "We can downgrade." My neighbor's son, who'd been mowing my lawn for 10 years, stopped coming. "We hired a service that bills us directly," Andrew said. It was only later I realized this no longer meant me. One evening, I came home from walking at the lake and found a woman I didn't know organizing my pantry in a labeled bins. "Kara's friend," she announced. "I optimized spaces." "My spaces were fine," I said, but softly, the way you tell a wind it's blowing in the wrong direction. She laughed. "You'd be amazed what a decanting system can do for clarity." They decanted my rice into a jar and threw away the bag with the cooking instructions I always read, even though the instructions never change. 2 cups water, 1 cup rice, simmer, wait. My world was losing labels that made sense to me. Everything was neat and nothing was mine. Chapter 4. The Fall I Don't Remember. In early October, Elaine's brother invited me for dinner. I promised to bring pie. On my way down the porch steps, my foot found nothing but air. There was a sound like a book closing. Then asphalt. The pie did not survive. A neighbor drove me to the clinic. The doctor said the words old people hate. At your age. At your age, hips are stubborn pottery. At your age, heads bruise like peaches. At your age, any fall is a warning, a billboard the sky erects just for you. When Andrew arrived, he looked rattled and angry. He hugged me too hard, as if he could push the accident back into the past. "This is exactly what we talked about," he said. "You need more help, Dad." Kara wasn't with him. She texted later, "So glad you're okay." We were scared. I told myself fear can look like control when it's poorly dressed. They moved a hospital-grade shower stool into my bathroom. They adjusted the thermostat to a temperature the house didn't recognize. They put my throw rugs in the garage temporarily. I felt like a guest who'd be asked for his key card at any moment. 2 weeks after the fall, Andrew sat me down, his face careful. "Dad, Kara, and I have been talking. The monthly bills here are a lot. We've been covering the extras. And with the mortgage." "There's no mortgage," I said. "I paid it off the year Andrew was born." He swallowed. "Property taxes, then. Maintenance. Utilities. And long-term, this house is big." I waited. He exhaled. "Cedar Brook has a 1-bedroom open now. Move-in ready. We toured on Saturday. It's bright. Activities. Movie nights on Fridays. You'd meet people. And my hydrangeas?" I asked. He didn't answer. Kara arrived later with brochures. "You'd love the library," she said. "They have a resident book club. The gentleman's table." I stared at the photos. The stage kitchens. The identical sofas. The horizonless halls. "I have a life estate," I said, pulling the strange new phrase out of my pocket like a sheriff's badge. "I'm living here. That's the deal." "But that doesn't mean you have to," Kara said quickly. "This is about choice. You'll still have the house to come back to." I looked at my son. He couldn't meet my eyes. He had the posture of a boy who broke a window and hadn't decided which lie would hurt least. "I'm not moving," I said. Kara's smile cooled 1 degree. "Of course. When you're ready." Chapter 5. The Locks. The first lock changed on a Tuesday. The back door key no longer turned. "Andrew had meant to tell me," he said. "We installed a smart lock. You can use the keypad. Safer." I learned the code like an immigrant learns a new bus schedule. One evening, I punched it wrong twice, and the door chirped like a scolding bird. I stood on my own porch, boxed out by technology in my sweatpants. A week later, a handyman I had not called removed the hook by the screen door because it's not standard. He took down Elaine's sun catcher because it sways into the walkway. He unscrewed the bell Andrew used to ring when he was 5 because bells with strings are tripping hazards. He left a neat invoice on the counter addressed to Hart Family Trust, trustee, Andrew Hart. I took the bell string and put it in my pocket. It felt like something living that had forgotten how to move. That night, lying in bed, I realized something that should have been obvious. A life estate is a promise that you may stay. It is not a promise that anyone will let your life look like yours while you do. I turned on the lamp and stared at the ceiling. Elaine would have said, "It's time to read the paperwork you signed, Sammy." Not the brochure. The paperwork. So I did. Part 2. What they didn't think I'd notice. Chapter 6. Fine print and finer friends. I sat at the kitchen table with a magnifying glass and the trust documents, my coffee going cold, because some rituals are more about courage than caffeine. I read slowly, the way you read warnings on medicine labels, lips moving, finger tracing the lines. The trust gave Andrew broad powers to manage, invest, pay expenses, even to allocate residence for the beneficiary. But the life estate language was there, solid as a brick. Samuel Hart retains the right of exclusive use and occupancy of the residence at 41 Maple Lane for the duration of his natural life. I made a copy of that page and slid it into a folder marked just in case. Then, and this part will make you proud, Elaine, I called someone who knew what these words meant beyond the suits. His name was Victor Reed. He'd gone to high school with me, and then to law school with the speed of a boy chased by small-town gravity. We hadn't talked in 20 years, but voice recognizes voice the way a violin recognizes a song. "Sam Hart," he said, and I could hear his grin. "You still making that chili nobody can finish?" "Depends who's eating," I said. "You still making the impossible possible?" "For the right price and the right person," he replied. "Which are you?" "Scared," I said, and mad at myself for needing help. I told him everything. He listened the way doctors used to listen before screens. Then he said, "Bring me the papers. All of them. And Sam, don't mention my name to your son yet." Yet, he said. "Let an old defense attorney be paranoid on your behalf." I collected every document, even the ones that looked decorative. I added the just-in-case folder on top. I put the bell string in my pocket because it felt good there, and I drove to Victor's office on Broad Street, 3 floors up, no elevator. He opened the door at the third knock like he'd been standing there counting. We sat across from each other with a table full of my bad decisions. He read faster than I had, but slower than a man looking for a shortcut. He underlined. He circled. He smiled once and frowned twice. "Well," I asked when he finally looked up. "You did 2 things right," he said. "You kept the life estate in the deed, and the trust is revocable by you as long as you're competent. Which you are. Don't let anyone tell you different." "What did I do wrong?" He shrugged. "You trusted convenience. Welcome to the most American mistake. But you're not trapped yet." He tapped a paragraph with his pen. "See this clause? Andrew can pay necessary expenses from trust funds. If he starts charging you rent or tries to assign your occupancy, we have cause, and we can revoke the trust entirely, take back title, and put protections in place. And the deed, the life estate deed prevents them from evicting you. They can make you miserable, but they can't take your key." He leaned back. "You want my advice?" I nodded. "Document everything," he said. "Every bill, every suggestion, every accidental lock change. Keep your own ledger. Be polite when you can, firm when you must. And Sam, yes, don't tell them you came to see me." "Not yet," I said, tasting the word. He smiled. "Good. People behave more honestly when they don't know they're being graded." Before I left, he slid a card across the table. On the back, he'd written, "Plan B, testamentary charitable remainder." It looked like a spell. "What's that?" I asked. "That," he said, "is the nuclear option. If they keep pushing, you change your will and your trust so nothing passes to them after you die. You give it to something that deserves it. A library, a scholarship, a fund. You make your life's work skip the ungrateful generation and land where it lands soft." I put the card in my wallet behind Elaine's last driver's license photo, where her smile could guard it. Chapter 7. The Campaign of Help. When Andrew called that night, his voice was bright, too bright. "Hey, Dad, Kara found a company that does home wellness check-ins. It's covered by the trust. They check blood pressure, medication, all that. I'm not a factory line, I said. Dad, I said no. There was a pause, then a sigh. Okay, but we're still moving forward with the safety audit. You can't argue with data. The next week brought men with clipboards who spoke in acronyms. They put bumpers on my coffee table and a tracker on my pillbox. They measured the distance between my sink and the stove like it could confess a crime. They recommended simplifying my bedroom furniture. I told them the chest of drawers was from our first year of marriage. They looked at it like a problem set. Could donate, one said. Free up mobility pathways. Mobility pathways. Another nice word for removing your history. I tolerated what I could and said no to what I couldn't. But no is a muscle. If you don't use it for a while, it trembles. Meanwhile, I kept my ledger. Dates, times, names, what they did, what I said, what they said I said. Victor advised me on phrasing. Never accuse, he said. Describe. Judges don't like adjectives. They like nouns. I practiced being a man who used nouns. Chapter 8. Christmas Plans. In early December, Andrew and Kara invited me to their place. For an early Christmas, Kara said, we're going to Aspen for the holiday week, and we want to do gifts with you first. Their living room was magazine neat. A tree took up the corner, decorated in a palette. Gold, white, no childlike reds, no finger-painted stars. Kara handed me a box wrapped in paper that matched the ribbon that matched the candles. Inside was a gray cashmere cardigan, so soft it felt like a lie. It's from both of us, she said. I thanked them. Then I handed my son a small envelope, a letter I'd written by hand. In it, I told him about the fishing trips we used to take, the way his mother would pack sandwiches wrapped in wax paper, and how a boy with a sunburn once pronounced himself captain of the rowboat and his father demoted himself to crew for the afternoon because happiness sometimes requires pretending. At the bottom, I tucked a folded photograph. Andrew in a bucket hat, both ears sticking out like parentheses. He read the letter, nodded, and set it down. Thanks, Dad, he said. Kara took the envelope, smiled politely, slid it under a candle. Later, in the kitchen, I said, I don't want to hurt your feelings, but I'm not moving to Cedar Brook. Kara rinsed a wine glass that was already clean. We'll revisit it in the spring, she said. I'm not visiting it, I replied. I'm deciding it. She dried the glass, very slowly. The trust paid your new roof, she said. And the medical bills. Andrew is doing his best. My roof was planned maintenance, I said evenly. And my medical bills are mine. The trust contains my money. Technically, she said, and that word did not mean what hers wanted it to mean. Andrew walked in then. Everything okay? Fine, Kara said. We're just discussing logistics. My son looked between us. He reached out, squeezed my shoulder. Don't worry, Dad. We've got you. When they dropped me at home, the house smelled like pine cleaner instead of pine. On my kitchen counter, a note in Kara's neat hand. We had someone come while you were out. Fresh start for the new year. Okay. They'd organized my spices alphabetically and thrown away the jars with handwritten labels. A fresh start meant my chili would taste like a stranger's house. I sat down. My hands shook. I put them under the table so the room wouldn't see. Then I called Victor. Part 3. The Line in the Marble. Chapter 9. Gathering Proof. Victor had me install a small camera above the front door. Motion-triggered, cloud-stored, legal because I posted a sign. Premises monitored for security. We're not spying, he said. We're documenting who comes and goes from your home and when. If the locks change again, if someone removes your property, we have timestamps. I also placed a voice-activated recorder in the kitchen in plain sight. What's that? Andrew asked the next time he came by. Doctor's orders, I said. My memory's not Wikipedia. He laughed uneasily. You don't need. I do, I said. And I pressed the button. I saved every email, every text. When Kara wrote, we'll need to show the Cedar Brook director your medication list, I responded, no, I'm not moving. When Andrew said, we agreed to revisit it in March, I replied, we did not. I said no. Neutral, precise sentences. Victor would have been proud. I was learning to speak in court, even at my kitchen table. Chapter 10. The Ultimatum. The ultimatum arrived softly, like a message delivered on velvet. Kara brought muffins on a Sunday. Blueberry, store-bought. She placed them on a plate I didn't recognize. We need to talk about timelines, she said carefully. For what? I asked, though my bones already knew. She laced her fingers on the table. We're putting the house on the market in March, she said. I stared. You can't, I said. I have a life estate. We know. We'll market it as subject to life estate. She said it like a real estate agent describing a finished basement. Buyers for investments are out there. They understand long horizons. My eyes burned. You want to sell my house to a stranger who will own the place I wake up in? Kara kept her face polite. It's the efficient move, Sam. We can diversify the trust. The market is strong. Andrew, I said, turning to my son, who had been hovering near the counter pretending to read a label on a jar he'd never seen. Is this what you want? He didn't meet my eyes. It's what makes sense, he said. For taxes. For everything. Everything, I repeated. Except me. No one spoke. The hydrangeas outside were sticks now. Winter's truth telling you what the plant really is without all the costume. I sat very still. I wanted to throw them out, to shout, to pound the table. Instead, I said, You'll hear from my lawyer. Kara bilinkit. You hired a lawyer? Yes, I said. And he knows the word consolidation, too. They left quickly. The muffin stayed on the plate like evidence from a polite crime. I took out my folder labeled just in case, opened it, and added a new tab now. Chapter 11. The quiet before the call. Weeks pass a certain way when you're waiting for a confrontation. Every sound is a footstep. Every sunrise is a judge's cough. Victor sent a letter to Andrew as trustee, asserting my rights under the life estate, reminding him of his fiduciary duty, demanding he cease all steps toward listing or marketing the property. It was stern without anger, the way a weather report can make a hurricane sound like a scheduled inconvenience. Andrew didn't respond directly. He called me instead. Why didn't you tell me you were going to a lawyer? He asked, voice shaking. Because you didn't tell me you were going to sell my house, I said. Silence. Then, Dad, Kara's pregnant. The word cracked the air like thunder. I closed my eyes. For a second, the world reordered itself into a familiar story. Young parents, nesting, financial prudence, the next chapter. I almost softened. But then I remembered my hydrangeas, the keypads, the garbage disposal of my history. Congratulations, I said, and meant it. Then, my home is not your down payment. He inhaled sharply. It's not like that. It is exactly like that, I said softly. And you know it. He exhaled like a balloon losing patience. Fine. Let's meet. Just you and me. No lawyers. I agreed. We met at Murphy's Diner, where men my age drink coffee like pennants. He sat across from me, his hands tapping invisible brakes. He started with childhood memories. Remember when we built that birdhouse? Remember when Mom burnt the first batch of Christmas cookies? Like nostalgia could tenderize the conversation. Finally, he said, Dad, I don't want to fight. Then stop fighting me. I said, I'm trying to protect you. From what? My furniture. From yourself. Is there a diagnosis I missed? I asked too sharply. Don't make me the bad guy, he snapped. I sat back. I don't have to, I said. You're auditioning without me. He rubbed his face with both hands. I can't keep doing this, he said, arguing every week, walking on eggshells. You put the eggs there, I said. The waitress arrived with pie. We didn't touch it. He stood to leave. I'll talk to Kara, he muttered. We'll figure something out. You do that, I said. But know this. The next time you touch my locks without my permission, I will revoke the trust. And I will rewrite my will. He blinked. You wouldn't. Watch me. He left without finishing his coffee. I took the pie home, warmed it for 9 seconds in the microwave because Elaine always said 9 seconds wakes up cinnamon, and ate it with my hands over the sink like a man who just survived a small war that might become large. Part 4. The Document. Chapter 12. The Last Straw. January thawed into a pale February. One afternoon, returning from the library with a stack of novels whose protagonists made better decisions than I did, I found the garage keypad unresponsive. I tried the front door. New hardware. Shiny. My key didn't fit. I rang the bell. The camera caught me ringing my own bell. No one answered because no one lived there except me. I called Andrew. No answer. I called Kara. Straight to voicemail. I called Victor. He picked up on the first ring. They changed the locks. I said, my voice smaller than it felt. Stay outside, he said. I'm calling the police. And a locksmith. And I'm on my way. Police. You have a life estate. This is unlawful exclusion. We're going to document it properly. 27 minutes later, times matter when you're collecting proof. A patrol car pulled up. The officer listened, took notes, radioed dispatch to confirm. The locksmith arrived, looked at the paperwork Victor had emailed, and nodded. You're the life tenant, he said. You can change them back. We did. The officer's body cam blinked a red dot. The locksmith removed the fancy lock, installed a normal one, and handed me a blessedly ordinary key. The officer wrote a report number on a card. If anyone challenges you, he said, have them contact us. Victor arrived 5 minutes after that, hair windblown, eyes on fire. He took photos of everything. You okay? He asked. I am now, I said. He looked at the camera above the porch. Good angle, he said. Send me the footage. We went inside. On the dining table lay a typed letter, and signed, printed on my own paper. For safety reasons and in anticipation of your move to Cedarbrook, we have temporarily secured the property. Please stay at Andrew's house tonight. We will bring your essentials. Love, A and K. I felt a heat I thought age had cooled forever. Temporarily secured, I said. Like a warehouse. Victor folded the letter and slid it into an envelope. Chain of evidence, he said. Sam, it's time. Time for what? He took the card from my wallet, the one that said Plan B. He held it between two fingers. This, he said, they crossed the line in marble. We respond in stone. Chapter 13, The New Will. The next week was a blur of signatures that felt like rescue helicopters. Victor arranged a capacity evaluation with a geriatric specialist. I passed with test score colors. He drafted a new revocation of the trust and filed it. Title to the house returned to a new trust with a different trustee, a bank that did not call me dad. The life estate stayed, but the remainder, what happens after I die, no longer flowed to Andrew by default. Victor then drafted a will that would have made Elaine raise both eyebrows and then smirk. In it, I created the Elaine Hart Scholarship Fund at our local community college, designated for working adults returning to finish degrees after caregiving. Elaine had paused her own education to raise Andrew, then gone back at 49 because she said brains weren't produce that spoiled if you waited. I also wrote small gifts to my neighbor's son who'd mowed the lawn, to the library that kept me alive through winter, to Victor, a bottle of bourbon he said he wouldn't accept and then did. And for Andrew and Kara, one sentence. For reasons known to them, my son Andrew Hart and his spouse Kara Hart shall receive nothing from my estate. Victor had suggested softer phrasing. I chose the important kind, the kind that tells the truth without embroidery. At the signing, two witnesses whose names I'll forget forever watched me hold the pen with hands that did not shake. When it was over, Victor put an envelope in a safe and handed me a copy. You sure? He asked, because good lawyers ask one last time. I nodded. If they apologize, if they change, if they return me my life, I can update it, I said. But today, this is my answer. And the confrontation? He asked. Let me do it, I said. I want the words to be mine. He smiled. Then do it in writing and in person, he said. And do it where there are witnesses. Church potluck. I joked. He grinned. Court, he said. I raised an eyebrow. You'll see. Part 5, the hearing. Chapter 14, papers served. When Andrew received the notice of the emergency injunction hearing, he called me 6 times in 20 minutes. I let it ring. Then I texted, I'll speak in front of the judge. Friday, 9 a.m. Victor and I arrived at the courthouse early. The hallway smelled like floor polish and fear. Andrew and Kara arrived together. Kara's face was composed. Andrew's looked like a boy who just discovered the ocean doesn't end where the map says it does. Dad, he said, approaching, hands out the way you approach a skittish dog. We never meant to. Stop, I said softly. Save it for the judge. The judge was a woman with gray hair and the kind of posture that says she's heard everything twice already. She reviewed the filings. Victor presented the police report, the footage, the letter about temporarily securing my home. He spoke like a man who knew adjectives were suspicious and facts were holy. Then the judge turned to Andrew. Mr. Hart, do you have counsel? Andrew glanced at Kara, shook his head. No, Your Honor. I didn't know. You didn't think, she repeated, but not unkindly. Proceed. He said the word safety a lot. He said the word confusion. He said my father doesn't always remember. He said we thought he'd be happier. He did not say we changed the locks on a house that isn't ours to control. The judge listened. Then she looked at me. Mr. Hart, she said, you may speak. I stood. The courtroom creaked. I had practiced these sentences in my kitchen, in the car, even in the mirror, but I still felt the wobble of emotion like a wave that forgets whether it's coming or going. I'm not confused, I said first because it mattered. I am grieving. I am getting older. I sometimes fall asleep in the chair and wake up without remembering what I was watching. But I am not confused about my home. I held up the copy of the deed. This house is my life's work. It is where my wife died and where the hydrangeas pretend to be oceans every June. My son asked me for trust. I gave it. He asked me for access. I gave it. Then he tried to take the door off the hinges and tell me a keypad was kindness. I took a breath. The judge watched me the way a person watches someone cross ice. I reserve a life estate. That is not a suggestion. That is the law. Last month, while I was at the library, my son and his wife changed the locks on my home. They left a letter telling me to stay with them and that they would bring me my essentials. I let the word hang. My essentials. As if the rest of my life were a museum exhibit they had closed for repairs. Kara shifted in her seat. I hired an attorney. I continued. I revoked the trust that put too much power in hands that weren't ready to hold it. And I rewrote my will. My son and his wife are no longer heirs to anything I own. There was a sound in the courtroom, like a held breath remembering itself. I turned toward Andrew briefly, not for sympathy, but because the truth deserves delivery to the face that earned it. Andrew, I said, I loved you more than any man should love a thunderstorm. But you tried to put me in the attic while you sold the roof. The judge cleared her throat. Mr. Hart, address your remarks to the court. Yes, Your Honor, I said, eyes returning to hers. I am asking for the injunction. I am asking that my son be barred from changing my locks or entering my home without my explicit written consent. I am asking the court to remind all of us that convenience is not custody. Victor didn't touch my elbow, but I could feel his approval like warmth. The judge nodded slowly. She looked at Andrew. Do you understand the relief your father seeks? He swallowed. Yes, Your Honor. And you agree to it? He hesitated just long enough to reveal the truth. Then he said, yes. The gavel didn't bang because TV lies about that. She just said, so ordered. It sounded like a door locking in the right direction. Chapter 15, The Parking Lot. Outside, the sky had the color of old paper. Andrew approached me with Kara 2 steps behind. Dad, he said, and his voice cracked. I am sorry. You're sorry, the judge heard. I said because I promised myself honesty. He winced. Then softer, I lost myself. Find yourself? I said. Somewhere that's not my house. Kara spoke then for the first time. We were scared, she said. About money, the baby, the future. I was scared too, I replied. And I didn't change your locks. She took a breath like a woman preparing to swim under a long wave. Are we cut off? Forever? I considered. The part of me that still wanted to hand a boyish sandwich on the way to a fishing trip wanted to say no. The part of me that had stood on my own porch with the wrong key wanted to say yes. Forever is big, I said. Right now is no. Andrew's shoulders sagged, then squared. Can we come by next week? To talk? Really talk. Send your proposal by email, I said, and watched both their faces. We keep records now. Cut off furushit. Andrew nodded. Okay, he whispered. They walked away together. They looked like a couple in a photograph you can't decide whether to frame or throw away. Victor joined me. You did well, he said. I did what I should have done months ago, I replied. He clapped my shoulder. Time makes courage expensive, he said. You paid. Part 6, Terms and Conditions of Love. Chapter 16, The Email. 2 days later, an email arrived from Andrew. It was long and stilted and sounded like a speech a man makes into a hotel mirror. But it said the words that matter. I was wrong. It listed concrete steps. Return of all keys copied without permission. A written agreement that no one enters without notice. Repayment by the new trust for any personal expenses charged without my consent. An apology, handwritten, to me, and, he added, to Elaine's memory. I wrote back a shorter email. I accept step 3. I accept step 1 with verification. I require step 2. Regarding the apology, write it for yourself first. Then decide if you want to send it. Kara emailed separately. 2 sentences that felt honest. I thought control was love. It isn't. I am sorry. I stared at the screen a long time. Then I typed, thank you. Take care of the baby. Chapter 17, Spring. Spring arrived, and the hydrangeas pretended to be oceans again. I hired the neighbor's son back, paid him in cash and lemon bars. The smart lock stayed off. The bell string went back on the door, tied to a small brass bell that chimed like a memory you didn't know was clean. One afternoon, on my way back from the store, I saw Andrew's car in the driveway. Panic fluttered until I remembered the new agreement required text notification. A text pinged. We're at the curb. Not entering. Wanted to drop something off. I found a package on the step. Inside, a framed photograph. Elaine with Andrew at age 6, both of them holding a lopsided cake with 73 written in green icing like a math problem. On the back, Andrew had written, for the dining room you said was too tidy. Love, eh? I hung it that evening. The dining room sighed with relief. Chapter 18, The Scholarship. The Elaine Hart Scholarship Fund awarded its first 2 scholarships in June. The ceremony was small, held in a community college lecture hall where the fluorescent lights hummed like insects and hope. One recipient was a nurse's aide named Myra who had cared for her mother through 3 winters and was finishing her degree in social work. The other was a man my age, back for a credential because his company had decided experience was interesting but diplomas were bankable. I gave a small speech. I said Elaine believed return is a verb. I said she believed in the kind of second chances you have to schedule on a calendar. I cried on the 3rd sentence and kept going because crying is just the body agreeing with the heart. After, Victor and I ate barbecue from a place that didn't pretend bones were optional. You did that, he said, pointing with his fork at my chest the way men do instead of hugging. Elaine did that, I said, pointing at the sky because I never knew where to point when she wasn't in a room. We toasted with sweet tea. To hydrangeas, Victor said. To locks that only keep out weather, I added. Chapter 19, The Visit. In August, Andrew texted, baby's here. Her name is Elaine. A photo followed. A tiny face, an enormous bow, the bewildered holiness of new life. Do you want to meet her? He asked. I stared at the screen until the letters blurred. Then I typed, yes. At my house. Sunday at 2. Bring nothing. Leave everything you think you know at the curb. They came at 2. Kara looked like someone who hadn't slept in a century and wasn't mad about it. The baby looked like a walnut that had decided to be miraculous. They handed her to me carefully, like passing a torch they had almost extinguished and learned at the last minute how to protect. Alaina, whisperat. Welcome to the house with the hydrangeas. Andrew sat forward on the sofa. Dad, he began, but I lifted a hand. Later, I said, let's start with names and diapers. The other things can come when the baby's not listening. We took a walk under the shady street. The bell on the door chimed when we returned. Kara smiled at the sound. That's nice, she said. It used to be here, I replied. Now it is again. They stayed an hour. When they left, Andrew hugged me like a man who had put down a very heavy object and discovered he still had arms. On the porch, he paused. The will, he said carefully. We know. We aren't. We won't ask. I'll decide, I said, based on how you live, not on how you argue. He nodded, eyes wet. Fair, he said. Chapter 20, The Letter I Kept. That evening, I sat at the dining table with a fountain pen Elaine had bought me the year Andrew learned to read. I wrote a letter to my granddaughter, to be given when she turned 18. It said, Dear Elaine, your mother and father named you after a woman who believed in second tries and first principles. I hope by now you figure out both. When you were a week old, you visited my house, and the bell rang on the door that used to be bare. If you ask your father what the bell means, watch his face while he answers. If he looks like a man who lost and found the same thing, you'll know you can trust him. Love, Grandpa Sam. I put the letter in an envelope and slid it into the folder labeled just in case. I added a new tab for when it matters. Then I made chili the way I always had, ignoring the optimized spice rack, mixing memory with measurement until it tasted like a home that had defense now, and boundaries, and a door that locked from the correct side. Part 7, Epilogue. What revenge meant. People think revenge is a gavel or a slammed door. It can be, but sometimes revenge is quieter. Sometimes revenge is a scholarship in a name that deserved to live on more than anger did. Sometimes it's a bell string back where it belongs. Sometimes it's a judge saying so ordered to the part of you that thought you'd lost your right to be yourself. My son thought he could consolidate me. I taught him that fathers who read fine print can consolidate consequences. I didn't ruin him. I didn't drag him through public mud. I built something he had to look at every time he said his daughter's name. The house remains mine to live in, by law and by will. The locks stay ordinary. The hydrangeas do their June magic. And every Friday, I sit on the porch with a book and look down the walk, just in case a young couple turns the corner carrying a baby who smiles like a new key fitting a very old door. If they do, the bell will ring. I'll get up, and I'll open it. Thank you for staying with me until the very end. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, and turn on the notification bell. And of course, share your thoughts in the comments below. You can choose another videos from this channel to watch. See you in the next videos.